This week is not about me. It is about you. I'm going to show you a good time. We're going to drink a lot of good wine. We're going to play some golf. We're going to eat some great food and enjoy the scenery. And we're going to send you off in style, old friend.
Okay, record go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis. This is episode number 257. And our movie this week is 2004's Sideways, and here to talk with me about it, because he hadn't seen it, it's Bobby Frankenberger. Bobby, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Travis. It's great to be back. It's been a long time. We talked about another movie a long time ago, didn't we?
We did. You came on. I had you watch Highlander.
That's right. I knew what we watched. I just thought, is it bad form to talk about another movie in front of this movie?
No.
I don't know.
And I took that and ran with it and have been doing Highlander content ever since. So that was quite a bit of fun.
That's
but
right.
You
I
had
take
never...
credit for that.
Yes, it's all your fault. So you had never seen this movie before, but were you familiar with it at all?
Sideways, yes, I knew of this movie. So I pretty much going into this movie didn't know hardly anything about it at all, except that I remember it came out when I was in college, and early in college. But it was not a movie. I remember it was not a movie for me. That's my thought, though. It was not a movie for me. It was a movie for my parents to watch.
Okay,
but like not my parents. More like an upper class society version of my parents.
Okay.
These were all the thoughts in my head
Sure.
at the time when it came out, right? So and I knew Paul Giamatti was in it, and that's it. So I had the sense that this movie was not targeted for me for some reason. But I think I'm certain I've changed my mind now. I think I would have liked it if I had seen it at the time.
It was one of those that it came out. So Alexander Payne directed this, and he co-wrote it based off of a book by Rex Pickett, which I didn't know until just this week that it was based on a book. I honestly hadn't known that, but I do remember this coming out.
Well, it's a funny thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that because it was I was reading a little bit about the background of it after I watched it, and the book was. Alexander Payne, the director, he also did I saw another one of his movies a long time ago about Schmidt. So that's the director. He was reading a manuscript of the novel before it was even published.
Yeah.
And on an airplane flight or something like that, and the story goes that when he landed, he immediately called his agent or whoever you call for these kinds of things and said, "We need to buy the rights for this as a movie right away because I want to make it." And then they timed it to where the book came out like a month before the movie did.
Yeah.
So it was kind of made in concert together, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, which is different. Like I've heard that type of thing happen one other time with 2001: A Space Odyssey. They were working on that movie and the novelization the novel at the same time.
Oh wow! And I didn't know that either.
Yeah, and they're not the same. Like Arthur C. Clarke went a little different direction with the novel than Kubrick went with the movie, which I thought was also pretty fascinating. And the book for this there are changes from the book to the movie, as there always is in an adaptation. We'll kind of maybe touch on some of those. But Alexander Payne, you mentioned, had done About Schmidt and Election before this, and he went on to do Nebraska, which a lot of people really like, and then his latest one, The Holdovers, which I still haven't seen yet, and I'm mad at myself for not going to see it in the theater because it's Alexander Payne working with Paul Giamatti again. Because I, like you, I went into this, so I did see this in the theater in 2004, and I honestly went solely because I saw Paul Giamatti was in the trailer, and at the time I was a few years out of high school. in my early 20s, and I was like, you know what? I like Paul Giamatti. I got nothing else to do. I'll go check out this movie. And it's got Lowell from Wings in it. I love him. He's funny. And I went and saw this, and it wasn't what I was expecting it to see, but I left the theater thinking, that was really good. I really enjoyed it back then, and I was like one of 8 people that saw it in my hometown. Like there was nobody in my theater to see this movie.
Yeah, that's but it's kind of a cerebral movie, isn't it? Like it's so it doesn't I guess necessarily surprise me that people wouldn't have been, but it does surprise me a little bit. Because everybody saw all the movies in the theater back in the day.
I mean, kind of, yeah. This was also just one of those movies where it comes out in October, and it's not really like it's not a fall movie. It's not a Christmas movie. It was sort of put out as it's an award season movie, and it did get a lot of nominations, and even won one Academy Award and a bunch of other awards. Although, amazingly,
which Academy Award did it win?
It won for Best Screenplay.
Yes, that's right. Okay, which well deserved.
Yep, it won Best Screenplay. It was up for Best Director, Best Picture, and Thomas Haden Church and Virginia Madsen were up for acting, but somehow Paul Giamatti didn't get an Oscar nomination.
So I don't know a lot about Oscar politics. All right, I don't ever follow the Oscars, but I hear people talk about people getting snubbed for Oscars. And does it feel like, seeing his performance in this movie, it feels like if I'm to understand what snubbing someone for an Oscar is, it's got to be this, right? Like
yeah, absolutely. Because
he was an amazing actor in this movie, like fantastic. Oh my gosh, it was so good.
So I had first seen him a few years earlier in Howard Stern's Private Parts. That was the first movie Paul Giamatti ever was a thing to me. He played just a hilarious character. He was great in it. That movie is okay, but he was amazing. And I was like, boy, this guy's really funny. And then he'd pop up and stuff here and there. But when I saw this, that cemented, I will just watch him and stuff. It doesn't matter. He hits that list of just his name is attached. Even if it's a tiny little thing, I thought as poorly conceived of a character as Rhino was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you put Paul Giamatti in there and it's well, I'm going to watch him because he always brings something to all of his movies. But this was the one where he's just so good throughout it because you believe him front to back.
That's the whole thing about this movie. If I'm to say, should we explain the premise of the movie? I feel like I'm going to touch on different things, and I don't want to leave people hanging.
Sure.
So the prep. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. So Sideways is a movie about a couple of friends going on a trip to California's wine country. It's Paul Giamatti and Thomas Haden Church play Miles and Jack. They were freshman roommates at UC Santa Barbara or something in college. Miles is a 8th grade English teacher and aspiring author. Jack is a former television actor turned kind of voiceover commercial actor now. He's still acting, but basically he's effectively Thomas Haden Church at the time this movie was being made. Because he has said that
I read that was
Jack is getting married, and so Miles is taking him on effectively a bachelor party, but it's just the two of them going for a week in wine country. But they're also kind of going through midlife crisis at the same time, both of them, in different ways. And we meet Virginia Madsen plays Maya. She's a waitress at a restaurant up there that they know. She and Miles have a little bit of history, but not much. Miles is divorced. He'd been divorced for about 2 years and just super depressed. He's a very depressed individual.
Yeah.
And hilarity ensues, I guess would be the way to put it. Hijinks happen. Some interesting things take place. Some of them seared into my memory forever, which we'll definitely get to those.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of it's a very you mentioned cerebral. I think that's a good word for it. It's a very thought-provoking movie about kind of going through that midlife crisis and sort of finding yourself again. I think is a lot of what I took from it, with some characters.
Yeah,
that
my
are
my
interesting.
thought when I walked away from it, when I walked away from it, I thought this is sort of like it's almost like the real. It's like a coming of age movie for 40-year-olds.
Yeah, yeah, in a lot of
You know,
ways.
like it has that feeling of like discovering yourself, but too late in life.
Yeah, because Miles is, he wants to be an author. He's working on a manuscript for a book that he's hoping to get published, and Jack was a like soap star. He was on a soap opera. One of them they name drop it, but I don't remember. But he was that, and now his career has kind of just become commercials and voiceover work, which is good work, and he clearly is doing okay. But at the same time, he's sort of going through a little bit of that crisis himself, and now he's looking at getting married. He doesn't know if that's the right thing. Meanwhile, Miles trying to get this book written, and he had been married, was happy, lost her, they get divorced, and he's been in this depression ever since. And he doesn't know who he is anymore. And it's Paul Giamatti's ability to be charming, but not in a traditionally charming sense. Like when you think of charming people, you think of like, your George Clooney's, or Jack in this movie is very charming. He's able to just worm his way in. Miles isn't a charming person necessarily. He can be, but his depression is so bad that he kind of can't get out of his own way. But there is something there.
Yeah.
He's
He's sort of I would say he's charming isn't the word that I would use for him, because I don't think that Miles is a likable character. Well, I think he's likable despite himself.
Yes.
He's like he's not really built to be a likable person, but somehow you walk away from this movie liking him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because nobody in this are like great people. But what I like about that is they feel real in that sense. Because when we meet Miles,
and realness is really sort of the word I would really use to describe this whole movie, because I think this movie has a lot of things. It's a comedy, it's a romance, it's a, like I said, like it's sort of a road trip movie, you know, but it's all of those things. You kind of feel like this is how this is how it would be to do those things in real life.
Yeah.
Like you constantly think like, oh, that conversation that they just had is like a conversation I've had with my friend, or, oh, that attempt at being romantic that failed. Yeah, I've definitely had that experience before in my life.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
So
that was a thing. Like I remember first time watching this feeling I very much identified with Miles as a character in terms of I wasn't a writer, I wasn't exactly him, but the way he felt about things, that insignificance he felt of like I'm this age, I'm in my whatever late 30s, early 40s, whatever he's supposed to be, and I haven't done anything yet. And I don't have a bunch of money.
Right.
I don't have like a great career. I'm a teacher. I'm teaching 8th grade. He doesn't look at that as being that great of a thing, even though teachers are amazing and should get all the praise. But he feels like he's insignificant and hasn't done anything. And I understood that even at that point in my life. I've kind of gotten past that a little bit in terms of I'm not looking for that large thing that I'm going to do now.
Right.
And that was what he had to sort of figure out is like, it's not about having a bunch of money or having this big thing. It's about being comfortable with who you are and carving out that little piece of your life. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things about his character is, as you're describing it, he's not satisfied with where he is or the things he's done or even where it seems like he's going. He doesn't want to be on this trajectory, and he's kind of like desperately trying to change, to go in the place that he's always thought that he was trying to go, which is to be a published author. And And I said a minute ago that he's not built to be a likable character, but you like him anyway. And I think maybe that's the reason why he's so likable, is because everything you see about him, he's constantly doing things, sabotaging himself, or saying things like he's not constantly being a jerk. He's not a jerk. It's kind of hard to describe why I say he's not really built to be a likable person. It's just that, but I think the reason he's not is the same reason why I feel like he is so easy to like, is because every time you see that every flaw in him, you're like, oh, but that's also like me.
Yep.
And so you have to either like him or or acknowledge that you are not, like, you have, because you see so much of yourself in his character.
Yeah.
Or at least I did.
Oh yeah. No, well, he's relatable. It's relatable to be Miles at some point. We've all experienced that at some point in our life where you're like, God, I'm just not where I thought I would be. I don't have the life or the things or the status or whatever thing it is that I thought I would have at this point, so it makes him very relatable, because he can be a bit of a jerk. He's pretentious, right? He's a wine snob. I mean, there's a scene right in the beginning of the movie. So they stop by to see his mom as they're leaving town.
Right.
And it's the day before her birthday. And, he's kind of, he's a bit selfish in the way, like, he doesn't want to stick around for her birthday. He doesn't want to see his sister. We don't get that backstory. So we have to kind of infer it. Like, we're not explicitly told, oh, he has problems with his sister, but it's kind of dropped here and there.
Sure.
But at one point, while they're eating dinner with his mom, he gets up to go use the bathroom and sneaks into her room and takes a bunch of cash from her. Finds her, like, hidden cash and takes it. And then he's constantly getting these gut punches happening to him, too. Like, then minutes later in the movie, his mom's like, do you need money? And you're like, as an audience, we're just like,
right. Yeah,
no, he does, but he is too proud to ask for it. Instead, he'll steal it from you.
Right. Right.
So, and that's the flaw. And, like, you can relate to that. You can relate to that not wanting to ask. You might not, like, I might not go find my mom's stash of rolled up hundreds and take it, but, like, I can relate to the I don't want to ask her for that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's just, and also his friendship. We all have that friend. Jack is the other guy, is his friend that he's going with, right? I feel like everybody's got that friend who is always trying to do the things that you don't have the courage to do,
Yep. Oh yeah.
And so it's I felt like the two of them together were one character in a way, or maybe a better way to put it is they are two halves of one well balanced person.
Yes. Yeah, because Jack is very optimistic, especially for Miles. He's always trying to boost Miles up. He's throughout the movie, he's telling him, look, man, your book's going to get published. Like, I believe in it. Even though he doesn't read it, Miles gives him a copy of the manuscript. He doesn't read it at all, but he still believes in his friend enough. And, like, that was one of the things that I loved in this movie that works so well is Miles and Jack. It's a friendship that you can believe because they're not perfect friends, but they work for each other. And there's a genuine, like, care between them.
Right. Right. They do genuinely seem to care about each other. There are moments when Jack is trying his hardest to cheer up Miles. His whole Miles is trying to take his friend Jack on this bachelor party week, like you said, so it's so funny because every time you say the good thing he's doing, it's also kind of also reveals the self-centered thing about each of these characters, right? Like, so Miles is taking his friend on this trip for ostensibly Jack's bachelor party week trip that he wants to do, but he's having him do all things that Miles enjoys doing, right?
Yep.
But Jack, as a good friend, is going along with it and not really giving any sense that he's not planning to have a good time, right? He's going to give it his go. But Jack also has his own motives for, and he doesn't make them keep them secret.
Nope.
He's like, I want to get laid one more time before I have to get married. Which there, you also have a flawed character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he also declares, and this is the good, like in his way, trying to be a good friend. He's like, and I want to pull you out of your depression, and I'm gonna find someone for you as well.
Yep.
And so it's like, in their flaws, they have like, and that's so, again, that's so like relatable and real. Like how many people do you know where someone starts attacking your friend for the bad person that they are, and you're like, but also he's not a, like, sometimes he's great, it's like you feel like you want to do that for these people,
Yeah. It's like,
and they're doing it for each other.
Yeah, like Jack is self-centered and trying to get laid right before he gets married and all this kind of stuff, but at the same time he sees Miles and he just wants to make sure he's happy again. Like they bring up at one point, I really liked the line where Jack tells him, like, because here's Miles pining over his ex-wife Victoria, and he's constantly upset and depressed about that. And at one point, Jack's like, "Yeah, but remember how small she would make you feel?" Like he brings up the stuff that Victoria did that wasn't good for Miles, so to try and help Miles kind of like, look, it wasn't all the rose-colored glasses that you're seeing it as. Like it wasn't necessarily great. And he's trying to bring him out of that and get him back out in the world.
It's funny that you bring that particular line up to do you remember how small she makes you feel? Because I do remember hearing that and thinking, that's again, like that's something that I would appreciate a friend telling me, rather than, like the go-to thing is like, oh, well, she was a terrible person, you don't want her anyway. But he's like saying like, no, she was not good for you.
Yeah.
Like he obviously has he has some insight on the relationship and on who he is as a person. It really goes to show that he is a very different person than Miles, but he is a good friend despite everything else,
Yeah. And it kind of fits his character too, because as an actor, he would understand people and he would kind of understand that aspect of things without necessarily being like book smart, analytical about it, but he would just sort of get it. And so, because he does come off a little, not always the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's got that insight and he's got that ability to read people. And so he understands them. Conversely, Miles is very studious and very much like the intelligent side of thing. I mean, there's that scene with Miles and Maya where she mentions she's got a paper she's working on, and you see like you see this instant change in Miles. All of a sudden, he realizes she's smart, she's going to school, and that changes things for him a little bit. So I just loved all that kind of stuff that was going on, all these subtle moments that would happen in this movie between the characters. And Maya, we haven't even really talked about. Virginia Madsen was great.
Again, all the acting in this movie is fantastic all around.
Yeah.
So she not also included,
Her and Sandra Oh, who I believe at the time was married to Alexander Payne. I think they were married at the time this was made. She was great because she is that fun-loving, kind of more free-spirited person. It fits with Jack and what Jack's trying to do. And I love at the point, so Miles and Maya have met before because she works up in wine country and he's up there all the time. And when Jack meets her, he's like, dude, this is the girl for you. And he immediately notices how into him she is. And Miles being both oblivious and like purposefully not seeing it.
Sort of like I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of self esteem, like he can't he can't acknowledge that someone would recognize him as a worthwhile person, a person to want to be with, right?
Yep. But Jack notices it right away, and then they meet Stephanie, and like Jack's taken with her immediately. They're going to have fun for the week. But there's that moment when it's revealed that Miles and Jack have to get back for their the rehearsal dinner and the wedding. and it's the big blow up moment where Maya gets upset with him, where Miles says, she's like, Maya keeps going on like, Jack's been telling her he's in love with her, he wants to move up here and buy a place and all this kind of stuff, and Miles is like, no, I believe he honestly feels all of that. Like, he probably believes all of those things he's saying, because that's just Jack. Jack is very like emotionally impulsive, it feels like. He just sort of goes wherever. Which I also find really interesting, because it matches with, him and Stephanie just match, and they make a good pairing for the time that they're together, right up until she hits him with that motorcycle helmet.
Oh my gosh.
Which, and if you notice, she's wearing a t-shirt with a peace sign on it.
Oh, I did not notice that. That's hilarious. Yeah.
As she is just beating the brakes off him with a motorcycle helmet. It's so...
That's very funny.
One of the things about this movie that just tickles me is it's this great character study, and then there's these moments of just insanity that kind of release the pressure, release the tension of a scene, and they're so funny.
Yeah.
There's a few of those, but it works because our four main actors work so well, and then all work so well together. I have like, when we get that wonderful montage of just Miles and Jack going around, hitting all the different wineries, hanging out. And then it ends on that hill, overlooking the vineyard. Yeah. When and and Miles is, he's reminiscing about his time with Victoria coming up there, and that's his place for him. Yeah, his ex-wife, and that's when Jack drops the bomb. She got remarried, and it's like the scene gets really heavy all of a sudden, because now he just walks back to the car and he's like, I'd like to go home, please. Like, just instant ruin. They turned him 180 degrees, and but then they take that and they give one of the funniest moments in this movie, which is where, he's upset. He gets out of the car. He's yelling at Jack about talking about all this stuff to Victoria behind his back without telling him. And then he just reaches in the back, grabs the bottle of wine while he's staring at Jack, rips the cork out, spits it, and then just takes off running down the hill. And I die every time I see that. It's so, Paul Giamatti is so funny in that moment. The look on his face, and then his run, that kind of waddly run. And they really ran down that hill. And I cannot believe, because if you've ever run down a hill like of any grade, you know how that goes. And
well, not only that, but he was, if you look, you can see him like taking swigs from the bottle as he's running down a steep hill. Like, it is a very funny moment. And then he runs into the vineyard that they're looking at, right?
And he makes it about maybe a quarter of a mile before it's just like, all right, I'm too tired. I'm out of shape. I can't do this anymore. Just chucks the bottle away. But like that moment, it's this great dramatic moment. The tension is broken, but it's still there. It doesn't take it away. It just gives you that moment of levity, as this guy's just, you can tell how on the edge he is.
Yeah, and it also does not betray the character, right? Like, it's not levity at the expense of the moment, because it's just a real visceral reaction of a person because up until that point in the movie, he's been talking about his ex-wife. You definitely get the sense that even though they're divorced and they've been divorced for 2 years, he definitely he wishes, whether he believes it's possible or not, he does wish and hope that something could happen, that they would get back together. And so there's that, and he's thinking about her constantly and all that kind of stuff. And then it's that moment is like where it's like all of whatever tiny sliver of hope that he had about a time in his life when things were going right, because they clearly are not, from his perspective, going right now. He's very unhappy. And then that tiny sliver just gets stomped on when he finds out that, because I think in that moment, not only does he finds out first that she's going to be coming to the wedding, and then it's like he almost kind of cracks, and he's like, "Oh, no big deal. That's cool. I'll get to see her." Like, that's what you see, like in his head, he's thinking, "Yeah, I'll see her at the wedding." And then he's like, "Oh, but also, she's married now.
Right.
And then it's all lost, and then yes, the writing and the directing of the movie is brilliantly inserted into that moment. All this slow tension buildup that you've been seeing about him as Miles as a character and who he is in this crappy part of his life that he's in. It's like the rubber band gets to snap for a second. You get to release that tension when he just acts like a fool and runs down this hill. And but again, it's not betraying his character. He's just done. He's cracked. He's like, I don't know. I don't know what to do now. I'm angry and I'm just gonna do this.
Yep. And it happens again later on with his book. So we get to replay that same type of moment, because now we've had later on in the movie, we've moved beyond the ex-wife thing. He's doing whatever, and then he's still concerned about the book. He hasn't heard from his agent, so he calls his agent and gets the bad news of just like, and his book's not going to get picked up. And that's when he has that second freak out moment in the wine tasting. I loved that place was called, it was the one winery he didn't want to go to. It was like Frass Orchards or something like that, or Frass Canyon. Frass Canyon, Canyon. I read that Frass is insect dung is called Frass.
Yeah, it's insect poop. It's called Frass, yeah.
So that's a great subtle joke that, like, I definitely did not get that the first time I saw this movie. I didn't know what Frass was, but it's a winery that he hates, and then to go back in and just have that moment again, hilarious moment where he's asking for the tasting, downs it, hit me again, trying to get the full pour, and then just grabs the bucket and pours it on himself.
The bucket that when you're tasting wine you spit into. So this is all like other people's backwashed wine. He's just lost. And remember, this guy, not only does he love wine, he loves wine enough that he detests having to go to this particular winery.
Yeah.
Because they have terrible wine. And then you can tell he's lost it because that character has decided to pick up this bucket of other people's spit out wine and then pour it into his mouth because they won't serve him any more wine. It is a hilarious moment, but again, the tension that moment was earned in the writing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because the tension is built up. You feel in the moment, like you understand exactly why he is acting that way, because again, he's lost all hope that his wife is ever gonna be a part of his life again, or his ex-wife, and all he has left is this book, right? That's all he has left in this miserable life of his. And it's not just that that's all he has left. The entire week and the potential for a relationship with Maya that has been being put on him, like Jack has managed to, at this point in the movie, has managed to make it so that they did have a kind of a nice time, and maybe they will get, to spend some time together, and him and Maya, who he's been eyeing for a long time on all of his solo trips up to this area. Like he really likes this woman, but it's all been predicated on Jack told one little lie that just ratchets up the tension in this moment so much, because Jack tells them all that Miles' book is getting published, that it has been accepted to be published, and that little thing has created all this tension. He's just hoping and praying that his book does get published, because not only is it the only thing he has left, but it's like the lie that is the success of his potential future dates or standing with Maya hinges on this lie that needs to become a reality now. And then he finds out, it's not going to happen.
Yep. So. That goes up in flames and he just loses it. And it's such a great moment. And then it's followed up almost immediately by, they get back to the hotel, and there's Stephanie, and she now knows that he's getting married, and that's when we get her clocking him with the. And it's I was reminded of the Simpsons moment where she's hitting him with the helmet over and over. It's like, stop, he's already dead. Like, you can't crush his face anymore. Just leave him be. And then we just
Yeah.
smash cut
Yeah.
to them driving as he's holding the bloody towel on his face. And like,
You don't even get to see his face. He
Nope.
just has a towel covered in blood, and his shirt's all, and towel is completely covering his face.
oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And like, there's so many moments in this movie that are like that, where they give you just what you need. Like even right at the end of the movie, the ending to this movie, I thought was kind of perfect for the movie that it was, which was, Miles has come to accept kind of where he's at in his life now. Because early on, he's the wine snob, and when he and Maya are talking, he mentions his like prized bottle of wine. He doesn't really have a wine collection, right? Which is the funny thing. He's like, I never had the money for that, but I have the one bottle, and it was the 61, whatever it was.
Chalet something.
I don't know enough about wine.
Yeah.
But apparently neither did Paul Giamatti. Like he said that he just faked all that. Like it was all written in the script for him, and he went with it, but he didn't really know wine at the time.
That's great. Yeah, I think I read that too. And then I also read that dinner together, the dinner scene where the four of them are at dinner together, was mostly improvised, which made me think, man, what a great improviser. You don't know anything about wine,
Right.
and you're improvising, talking all this about wine. That's great.
So, but he mentions that to her, and she's like, well, what are you waiting for? Why haven't you opened that yet? It's peaking. You're gonna miss that moment. And it's that great kind of microcosm of his life in a way. It's the really smart script. So for him at the end to come to grips with that and actually open that bottle, fish it out and open it. And it's such a great scene when he does, where he goes to just this greasy burger joint with a burger and some onion rings and is drinking it out of a styrofoam cup. But that's the moment, because he was waiting for the perfect moment to open that bottle. And that perfect moment is never going to happen. You have to create that perfect moment. And he kind of did by just having it by himself. But that was him realizing that waiting for it was just going to be waiting for it forever. And you just have to live.
I had a different interpretation of that. I think I agree on the fact that he's drinking that bottle in that moment, because I do agree that he's realizing that perfect moment is never going to happen. But I felt like he was not realizing that in a positive way. He was very much like my life is terrible and it's never going to get any better. And so why am I holding on to this? And I think by the end of the movie, he does realize what you're saying, though.
I think that's what I got ahead of myself, because you're right.
Yeah, sure.
In the moment, he is like, well, there's no better time than now. I'm just going to drink this because it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
But that's such a good moment, followed up by he gets the voicemail from her, the answering machine message from Maya. And that's when he has the positive switch of he's like, I'm going to go for it then, because what does he have to lose? But I love him going through all of that, and then we end on him knocking on her door, and that's when we cut. Yeah. Like it's a perfect ending.
I read some criticisms of the ending that people saying that they didn't like the ending because they felt like you didn't get to see a resolution to the character. But I liked that they didn't, because the whole movie is all this tension and things getting worse and worse for him. You get to be left with a hopeful optimism about where he's going without, and then so you get to make up where things are going in your own head. But I like when it's left open like that. And I do believe that there is an arc in this movie.
For sure.
And the arc is for Miles. I think he goes from thinking that the only way for his life to be worthwhile is that he's got to get this book published, because that's the secret to everything, right? It's the secret to his success. It's the secret to him feeling as a worthy as a person, and it's also this apparently also the secret to his relationship now, because that's what Maya thinks is part of his, all these things.
Yep.
And then at the very end, Maya eventually calls him up and tells him, I read your book, because he gave her a manuscript. I read your book and I liked it. And she not only says, and again, it's sort of like a good, what do you call it? It's sort of like a full circle movement, because at the beginning he asks Jack, his best friend, if he read the book.
Yeah.
And Jack lies to him and says, I read it. And it's clear that he didn't read it.
Oh yeah.
But now Maya's calling him and leaving him a message on the phone, and it's very clear that she did read it, because she's giving specific things that she liked about it and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's that moment where you get the arc for him, because it's like he realizes, I don't need this published. I wrote something that one person I care about liked.
Yes.
And that's enough for me,
Yep.
And that's a really nice moment, is when you realize he's like, that's enough. That's what I need.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I love the way this ends, because I don't need them to tell me what happened with Miles and Maya after the movie. Like after that point.
Yeah.
I don't need that. That's a story for another time. That's not this story. This story ends with Miles deciding that it's good enough, that that's what he wants, and he's going to go for it. And so I just really, because I'm like you, I like that hint of that hopeful optimism that it gives you after the entirety of what the movie was, and then give you that hopeful optimism and say, cool, maybe some stuff happened. Now, there was a follow-up novel written, but Alexander Payne has said he's not interested in making a movie of it.
Sure.
Which I'm fine with. But yeah, it was, and I love too, like her voicemail to him about the book mirrors and echoes the moment they have at Stephanie's house when they're sitting on the back porch and they're talking about wine and why, because she asks him straight out, like, why do you like Pinot Noir so much? And it's that soul of a writer that he's got, as he's explaining why he likes it and what it is about
that whole scene is my favorite scene in the whole movie. It's beautifully acted. It's I already used the word beautiful, but it's beautifully written. It's like there's so much subtext in that monologue that first Miles gives, and then is followed up by a monologue from Maya. And they're both telling each other about what they like about wine, but they're both at the same time, because this is also a moment when they're sort of courting each other, I guess, like trying to feel each other out and figure out, is this going anywhere? Are we going to make out? Are we going to, what are we going to do? And so they're asking each other what they like about wine, and they're telling each other that, but they're definitely actually telling each other about themselves.
Yes.
And it's so well done. And that whole scene, the whole dinner, and that whole thing is really well done, because you can, like, the acting is fantastic. You can feel the awkwardness of them trying to feel each other out and trying to get somewhere, and then maybe saying the wrong thing and realizing it, but not saying it, and just kind of all this kind of stuff. And it just goes so well. And also it's such a great, beautifully written scene, but it's also the most heartbreaking scene to me in the movie, when he first doesn't seem to have the courage to be receptive to her advances. He gets up, goes to the bathroom, and then he works up the courage, but then the moment's gone, right? He comes out and he tries to kiss her, and it's the most awkward and heartbreaking moment in the movie, because it just fails, right?
It's rough. And not only is that scene written that way, but then the direction of it, and to keep the camera, like him coming out of the bathroom and sort of taking a second, stealing his resolve, and then going to her to kiss her. And the camera doesn't move. It doesn't follow. We don't cut and follow it in. We don't get close. We stay back, this kind of weird fly on the wall. We watch it happen.
You're watching it from the other room, right?
Yeah.
Like you're watching it through a doorway from the other room, and it makes it all the more awkward. Like you're kind of voyeuristically seeing them
Yeah.
them try this really intimate thing, being vulnerable with each other, and then it failing.
Yeah. And then he's got a, that it moves on from there, but it's just, I'm with you. That is my favorite, like, scene in this movie is that whole, really from kind of the start of dinner until that moment when they drive off. But especially when they get to her house and all of that part.
Yeah.
It's just so
There's a lot
wonderfully
of
done.
awkward tension the whole time with them talking to each other, asking each other questions. And it's one, I keep saying it, that it feels very real. Like this would be a real conversation that real people would have when they were on a first date trying to get to know each other and awkwardly asking questions and giving answers and wonder. You can tell in the actors' heads, like you can feel that they're thinking after they give an answer to a question that somebody asks, wondering, did I say the right thing?
Yep.
Is this, all that kind of stuff. It's a very masterfully done sequence,
And it's a beautiful way to show people opening up in a way, like without having to, they're opening up about themselves very, very personally without it being about them at the same time. Because of the subtext and sort of dancing around. It's just so wonderfully done. So I absolutely adored that. There's so many great moments in this. And then like we get that kind of almost coda, not really a coda, but towards the end where everything's falling apart with Stephanie and Maya because they find out that Jack's getting married. And Jack's all depressed about that now. He's bummed out. He's got the broken nose. Miles is just a wreck. And they decide to go get food. They go to whatever that place is, AJ's something, or what, the place that just had like the 2 pounds of ribs on a plate. Like I've never seen a plate of that many ribs before. It was amazing. And like it feels like this should have been. It almost feels like it should be a scene from the beginning of the movie, like when they first get there. But it's perfectly placed to have it towards the end, because it leads to a moment that I will never ever forget in any movie ever. But after, so Jack starts hitting on the waitress because she recognizes him. And he ends up spending the night with her. But when he shows up at the back at the motel at whatever it is, like 6 a.m., 5 a.m., and he's just naked standing outside the door, which apparently that was part of his audition. Thomas Haden Church, when he was auditioning, he stripped naked for the scene, and then later found out none of the other actors did. Like he was the only one to do that, which is just great. But he gets back, and then it's like, oh, I left my wallet. We got to go back and get it. It's like, oh, come on. And I mean, Miles, of course, is like, what? No, we're not going back there. But he can't really refuse Jack. He's just terrible at that. So they have to go back and get it. And MC Gainey is an actor who I have seen in a lot of things, and you've probably seen him in plenty of other stuff. He's a character actor. He shows up a lot. But I will never forget him in this movie because of the scene where Miles goes to the house. They go to the house, and Miles is like, all right, fine, I'll go in. And he sneaks around back and gets inside. And again, this feels like, how real does all of this feel? Where he's...
It does in a way, because at first you're thinking like, no, you would never... Because you might think, I would never like sneak into somebody's house to do this. But at the same time, I empathize with Miles, because I don't know if you mentioned it. The reason that Jack has to go back, and the reason that he showed up naked at the motel room that they're staying at for the week, is because the waitress that he went home with to sleep with, it was married. He finds out, and the husband comes home in the middle of them doing it. And he gets run out of the house, and he runs 4 kilometers, is what they said, naked all the way back. But anyway, so they have to go get the wallet, like you said, right? So he Miles is like, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to knock on the door and say, hey, my best friend who is just sleeping with your wife left his wallet here. Can I get it, please?
Yeah.
So I totally believe that I would find every way to get that wallet back without having to talk to that husband.
Yep. And then when you notice like the slider door is just slightly open, so you just, the door was open. I just walked in. But then he's crawling on the floor trying to be quiet when he hears noises, and he goes back there and hears the waitress and her husband just going to town on the bed. And it's almost like a weird kink thing they have. And he's just fascinated at first, and he can't stop watching. But then he notices, of course, the wallet's in the bedroom on the dresser.
Yeah.
And I love that it's what we see and what we don't see that makes this even funnier, because kind of like we didn't see Jack's face when he got hit by the motorcycle helmet, which made that even funnier. To see Miles just get up, run into the room, and then we just cut to the outside of the house with Jack sitting in the car, and Miles just comes sprinting out of the house, and right behind him is MC Gainey, naked as a jaybird, running after him.
Yeah.
To where they get
everything flopping around.
Everything. And then chasing him down the street. And it's just seared into my memories now. I cannot unsee what I saw there.
He had a hat on.
Yes.
I do remember that.
Yeah, he had like a knit hat on. That was it.
Yeah.
And I guess behind the scenes, the house that they were filming in had been a crack house. And had been like seized by the police a few weeks beforehand. And location scouts found out about it, and so they didn't do anything to the inside of the house. They just left it as is.
Yeah, and
it
was a terrible mess inside there. Yeah.
And then on top of that, they had closed off the street to film that scene of him running out of the house, and they had to like tell everybody to stay inside. And I just have to imagine if you lived on that street and you look out and there's just, because MC Gainey is not a small man, like he is like 6'4". Yeah. You know, he's a big dude just running naked down the street. Just something I won't forget. I can't help it, no matter what I see him in now. But it's a hilarious moment.
I want to go. Yeah, it is a very funny moment. It's like we were saying, one of those rubber band moments to relieve some tension, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to when he was when he showed up naked and was pleading with Miles to go get the wallet.
Yeah,
that scene also is the moment when I had a realization that I thought this movie's about, I think, a few things. I think it's about friendship. I think it's about depression. But I think that's the moment when I realized that this movie is also about addiction.
Yeah.
And Miles, whether it's said or not, Miles clearly has a drinking problem.
Yeah.
And his friend Jack clearly has, maybe, I don't know if you could fully call it, I'm not trying to diagnose anybody.
Sure.
But he clearly, maybe he has an addiction to either sex or to this feeling of new excitingness or something like that. He can't help it because when Miles says, I'm not going to go, it's fine. Your wallet is fine. People's wallets get stolen. That's the story we'll tell. Jack breaks down into tears. He's like in a like bawling, saying, "I can't lose Victoria," like his wife that he's been sleeping around on this whole week. He's clearly does want to be with her, but he can't help himself on this week out doing these things. He can't help himself with these women. And I thought that was a really powerful scene too, just seeing him. It's sort of funny seeing him blubbering a bit, but as the crying goes on, you realize, oh, this really isn't funny. This is like, he really is feeling this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's why like Miles saying a couple scenes before that to Maya, like, no, I think he believes everything he's told Stephanie this whole week. You can buy that. Like Jack believes all this stuff. He just, like, he can't see too far beyond where he is. And so I think that's a big part of it, right? Is like he's just inside the moment so much, to his detriment at times. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really powerful scene, and also a really that scene in the hotel room is really funny because mentioning the ostriches. I might have clipped some audio from that.
He had to run naked through an ostrich farm.
It's just I did capture a few clips. This movie is very quotable, very funny.
For sure.
And it's just great. I gotta play a few of these. Some of these are too good not to.
Yeah, let's do it.
So in the scene we were talking about, Jack comes in and he wants the Vicodin and he's talking to him, and Miles is like, "Wait, you walked from there?" He's like, "Well, ran." And it's 5 clicks. That's what he says. He's like, it's like 5 clicks, and he goes,
Ain't right, it's 5 clicks. At one point I had to cut through an ostrich farm. These f***ers are mean.
They were mean. And
Yeah.
I love too, like, if you're paying attention, they sort of hint that there are ostriches around here earlier in the movie when they're at one of the restaurants and Miles says, have it's like an ostrich burger or ostrich fillet or something.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a funny payoff to that. But yeah,
it's also in the montage that you mentioned earlier where they're
right.
going around doing stuff. They visited an ostrich farm and I guess because that's all you see is the ostriches. So it's they must have visited an ostrich farm.
Yeah. I played a clip at the beginning of the episode of them right before they leave. So they're in a diner having breakfast the morning after he stole money from his mom, and they leave her sleeping on the couch because he doesn't want to spend any time with them. And I played, Miles being like, "Oh, it's gonna be a great week. We're gonna drink some great wine. We'll play golf," which I don't know why Miles wants to play golf because he's terrible at it.
Yeah.
And but all of that, and then it ends with Jack telling him,
And get your bones smooched.
and that was too funny to not capture that, because
That's great.
The euphemisms Jack used killed me throughout the whole movie.
There's later a scene where he says something similar when they're walking past a man and his son in a restaurant. They're just that's a really funny moment. They're just casually, and he says something about you need to get her.
It's so crass,
lewd.
but
yeah, you need to get her box squeezed around your Johnson or something like that. But he says it right as they're walking by a father and his son.
And the father's like, "Could you keep it down?"
Yeah.
This was one I related to back then and now. It's when Jack is asking Miles about, "Hey, you still seeing that shrink?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Are you still seeing that shrink?
I saw him on Monday. I spent most of the time helping him with his computer.
It's like, yeah, no. You'll always get me with that joke. Doesn't matter because it happens. This is like, and we talked about how Jack is kind of like positive almost to a fault in some ways, especially with Miles. Like he's constantly trying to build him up, but like this one was when they're having dinner with Miles' mom, and she brings up his ex, and how they should get back together, something along those lines. But it's just the exchange, and this is one of those. Again, this is one of those great acting moments from Giamatti, and I just like this line.
I just got divorced, Phyllis.
2 years ago, buddy.
Like, he's all dour. I just got divorced. And there's Jack.
Yeah.
It was 2 years ago there, bud. Like, come on. It's time to move on from that. I loved it. I like this because this is a turn of phrase that I don't know that I've ever heard, but I've certainly done. When they're having dinner, the four of them, and Miles gets up and goes to the bathroom, and then he calls Victoria from the payphone there. And when he gets back and he sits down and he's still upset, and Stephanie catches on to that real quick, and that's why she just looks over at Miles like, "Let's go to the bathroom." And they get up and leave, and immediately Jack's like, "What is wrong with you?" And he asks him,
Did you drink and dial?
"Did you drink and dial?"
Did you drink and dial? Yeah.
I love that. Because we've all done that one. That's a mistake we've all made. So yeah, that was pretty good. Let's see. Oh, so Miles is the wine snob, right? And he's teaching him how to taste wine. So they're sitting there, that first vineyard they go to, and he's showing him how to, how to look at it and how to sip it and smell it and all that. And then it just ends with,
Are you chewing gum?
Yeah. I love that. I went back and listened to that again when it happened because I was. Yeah,
it's so good. Oh, this one. Oh, we meet Jack's fiance and her parents early on at their house when Miles goes over there to pick him up. And it was I just liked this exchange because here's Miles. He wants to be an author. He's writing a book, right? And her dad, who he's clearly got some kind of a relationship with. He's met them before. They like him. And her dad is like, well, is it fiction or nonfiction? And he tells him it's a novel. It's a fiction novel, but there's, kind of nonfiction because it's sort of based on my life. And it was just...
Right.
I like nonfiction. There's so much to know about this world. I think you read something, somebody just invented it. Waste of time.
It's an interesting perspective.
It's like, it's so good. That's such a good response to that. It's an interesting perspective. And meanwhile, you can just tell Miles is like, I hate you so much right now. There's so, like, again, Paul Giamatti is just so good in this. When they get to his mom's house, they go inside and she's in her, nightgown or whatever, and says, well, sit there, let me go put on my face. And she starts heading upstairs, and you just hear her call back down if they're hungry. You know, like a mom will do. And it's just
a snack.
He's like, yeah, I'm hungry. It's just a snack. And they end up with like a full meal.
Right. Right. But also the whole time, Jack, before they even get there, is like, why are we stopping at your mom's house?
Right.
And he's like, it's only going to be for a minute. I'm just going to stop in and I'm going to give her some flowers and say happy birthday. And then we're leaving.
Yep.
And then they end up staying the night. That's
it's so good. Let's see. This is, I labeled this one explain. I don't know what that means. I don't remember. This is bad. I'm starting to forget what I record. But here we go. Explain.
Explain the situation. Yes, excuse me, sir. My friend was the one bawling your wife a couple hours ago. Really sorry. He seems to have left his wallet behind. I was wondering if I could come in and just poke around. I don't know.
Yeah, just like that.
For
That's good.
Christ's sake.
It's so good. Oh, because again, it's completely within character for Miles to be like that, and Jack to be like, no, that's great. Do that.
Yeah, like he thinks that Miles is actually workshopping what he's really going to say, right?
Mind if I just poke around in there for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Here's another great one.
You dick. Why do you have to focus on the negative?
That's Jack in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Why do you have to focus on the negative?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I love their relationship because we've talked about it, but it feels like a real friendship because they really do care about each other.
Yeah.
Like Jack really just wants Miles to lighten up, and he knows he can be fun. I mean, he tells him at one point, be your normal, funny self. Don't be this guy you've become. So.
Yeah, it feels like a friendship that that is as unconditional as it gets, right? Because they clearly are like pissing each other off all the time and all this kind of stuff, and telling each other how it is and all that kind of stuff. So it is good.
Yeah. This was right before the moment where Paul Giamatti is where Miles is doing the whole I'm going to go up to the door and knock on it type of thing. He asks what the plan is when they pull up in front of the house, and it's just
You go.
Me?
You go. It's such a good reaction. And I didn't capture it, but right after that, right after Miles is like, me, it's just Jack being like, well, my ankle, it still hurts. Because he twisted his ankle running back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that whole scene in the car before he tries to sneak into the house is just epic level of writing and delivery. The delivery of everything is
Yeah.
so spot on.
Yeah.
See, this one's just that must. I think I remember what this is, but here we go.
Yeah, that must be it.
That's early on when they're driving, and it's around the time he's asking him about the book. And
yeah.
like, oh, people
when
just
he
aren't
explains
getting it
why
or
he
whatever.
hasn't read, or
Yeah,
he was trying to say like he was trying to convince him that he had read it when he clearly hadn't, and then he's gives him all these excuses for why he just said because Miles is fishing out whether he actually read it, asking him all these questions like, did you like how I changed the ending, when he didn't actually change the ending.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, the ending was great. And he says, but I didn't change the ending. And then Jack is like, says something along the lines of, oh, well, it must have just seemed like you changed it because all the other things you did change made it feel so different or something like that. And that's when he says like, yeah, that must be it.
That must be, and it's in the movie, it's even better because it's the look on his face as he says it. Like it's just perfect. And finally, writer is what this one is. So here we go.
Hey, what should I wear? I don't know, something casual but nice. They think you're a writer.
That's what it was.
They think you're a writer. like it's a lie, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Jack's fully leaning into that. There are two more. I love capturing laughs in movies. Whether they're I love the kind of overly fake laughs that you get from actors.
Yeah.
Whether they're on purpose crazy, like a Nick Cage type laugh, or they're just a really good belly laugh. And Paul Giamatti, when he finds out that that Jack has run back naked from this guy's house at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he just starts laughing, and it's just so good. Like it's just this. It's almost a Joker like giggle.
Yeah.
And one more was
Woo!
the wheezing is what does it on that one.
Yeah.
And the final audio clip, because there was no way I wasn't going to capture the sound that Jack makes when Stephanie says, well, we go back to my place. I've got some weird cheese and music and all that. And I saw a bunch of outtakes of that scene because they did a lot of improv there and all the different things that he would do before turning to call for the waiter. But this sound was too good, and I'm glad they went with it in the movie. And it was this. I don't know. It's kind of a cat meow, but not.
Yeah,
it's
kind
so
of like, he's trying to be playful with Stephanie, and he's clearly overexcited about this development.
Yep. So I have that, and now I will keep it and have that on a soundboard forever. I may have to turn that into an alert noise. That's too good not to have.
That is a good one.
Yeah, this movie, if you haven't seen it before, I don't know. It's not streaming anywhere currently, I don't think, on any services. At least it...
No, I rented it on Apple whatever.
But I do think that it may find its way out there with the holdovers kind of being a thing again, as it's hit streaming services. Point. I'm kind of hoping anyway. But even if it's not on a service, it's well worth renting. In fact, you can buy it on Amazon for $5. You can buy it for, or you can rent it for $4. But I think it's a movie that I think more people should see because it's just a really interesting character study, and it shows you can do something very funny and very heartwarming and very, while also being just very real, something that's very relatable and real. Yeah. So.
And it absolutely holds up too. It's it's not one of these older movies. It was made 20 years ago. It's not one of these older movies that really shows its age and that it was made in a different time. They're out in wine country, just going around and drinking wine and hanging out with people. And the only thing that really betrays its age is that they have flip phones instead of smartphones,
and that they don't all have phones.
It definitely. Right.
Using
exactly. Yeah. They use a payphone at one point. and but it definitely holds up. And I have to say, Travis, this I really feel like this is the first movie I've seen in a really long time that was not like a Marvel movie. And it kind of struck me that, wow, I forgot that movies are actually good.
Well, and good, and they can
And
just be small. Like they can just be this little thing talking
yeah.
about a couple of characters. You know, a couple of friends going
Yeah,
to
you
wine
keep
country.
calling it a character study, and I think that that's a fantastic description of it, because it is just a beautiful study of people, real people, and the way that they interact and deal with things that are going on inside of them. And
Mhm.
the actors just do a really fantastic job of showing you everything that is going on inside their heads. And it really is I was surprised to, I guess I shouldn't have been ever. It's a popular movie and people talk about it a lot for a reason, but I wasn't expecting it to like, I wasn't expecting to like it so much.
Yeah, it's one of those that, like you said, it's kind of it wasn't aimed at you at the time it came out necessarily. It certainly wouldn't have been something marketed for, you know, the younger crowd at that point. But when you watch it, there's a lot to take away from it, and I think it also is rewatchable because you can see new things every time you see it. You know, because I love escapist cinema. I love Marvel stuff or you know, sci-fi stuff where you can just go somewhere completely new. But I also really like when I can watch a movie that's just grounded and just gives you that little slice of life. And you can just kind of sit with some characters, because when it's well written and well acted and well directed, it's a joy to watch, whatever the subject matter may be. I'm not a wine person. But I understand, like, I don't need to be, because the character of Miles is. And so he can kind of give you that. This movie also actually had a real world effect on wine. I don't know if you read that or not.
I heard that. I did.
Yeah, like sales of Merlot went way down, and sales of Pinot Noir went way up because of this movie. They call it the sideways
because he's
effect.
way into Pinot Noir.
Yep.
Yeah, he's way into Pinot Noir. Always talking about it. There's that whole scene that we said was one of our favorite scenes. He's talking about Pinot Noir, but then there's that line, that throwaway line that's almost everybody's favorite line whenever been reading about this, which is he yells before they're going to go in to see those women for the first time. He says, "If anybody orders Merlot, I'm getting the F out of here.
Yep, I'm leaving." It's
yeah.
No, this is a fantastic movie, and I also kind of like when a movie has a title that sort of feels like it doesn't make sense and they never explain it. Because sideways is just like another term for getting drunk. You get sideways,
Right.
But I like that it's never like a thing in the movie, because I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, I don't get why it's called Sideways, but sure, whatever. I had a good time, and it makes sense when you learn about that. Like, oh, okay, yeah, no, they spend a lot of time sideways in this movie.
I read an interpretation of the title also. I can't take credit for this, but I do know it. I am a bit of a wine person, and so I know that the interpretation I read was that bottles of wine are stored sideways, and the symbolism there was that that they're stored sideways so that over time, as they age, they can grow and develop as wines. And so it's kind of like that's what you're watching these characters do, right? Is all this time. So
that's cool. I didn't think about that. And I, as not a wine person, but I do appreciate a lot of it, and I appreciate the art of, you know, getting into wine and tasting it and seeing all the differences to it. Because for me, wine is like beer and craft beer, or it's like vinegars, obviously coming from wine, all those different things where there's all those subtle differences and you can really dive into it. I love geeky habits like that and hobbies, and wine is one of them. So it's just cool to have a movie kind of dive into that, because it's not a subject that normally pops up in a movie. Because like you said, we usually get the big bombastic stuff, and this isn't that. So
it definitely isn't that. I'm laughing because because for the first part of the movie, I was not sure that I was going to enjoy it because I was like, is this going to be boring? um, but it wasn't. Like I said, I am a bit of a wine. I love wine. I've been to a few wine tastings, and there was a line in the movie that I thought was very funny. And so I say this because you said that you don't have to be into wine to like this movie, and that's absolutely true. You don't have to. It's definitely sort of like marketed as a wine movie, but it's not. It's just part of his character, right? But I think there are moments in the movie that you absolutely will appreciate a lot if you do like wine, and if you have been to wine tastings or you know a bit about wine. There's one he's reminiscing and he's talking about his wife. Remember you were saying they're overlooking the vineyard, and it's before he runs down the hill and finds out that his wife is remarried. He's reminiscing about that spot that they used to picnic at, that they're sitting at, and he says something. He's talking about how much he loves his ex-wife and how great of a person she was, and it's talking about how much of a refined palate she had, but she was also just this great person who just goes with things. And there's a line in there. He says, we were having such and such wine with smoked salmon and artichokes, but we didn't care.
Yeah.
And I thought, I thought that's hilarious because every time you go to a wine tasting, they're talking about all the different meats and cheeses and things and fruits and foods that you're supposed to pair with different wines. And he's like, we were having it with smoked salmon and artichokes, but we didn't care. You know, it was like we were throwing caution to the wind.
It's so good. Yeah, I do live in an area that has a lot of wine. The part of Michigan that I live in is very similar spring and summer climates to wine country in California. So we have ridiculous number of wineries around here, and I've actually taken people on wine tours. I've done a few tastings here and there, but I'm usually the driver.
Yeah,
I usually end up being that guy. Because I did it professionally for a little while. I was a cab driver, and our company did wine tours, but then I have some friends of mine that like to go once a year, and they'll call me up and be like, hey, you want to drive us around to the wineries? And I'm like, it's an excuse to hang out with my friends for an afternoon. Sure. I don't care. So I've been around enough of that I was able to appreciate a lot more in this movie than I probably would have without living where I do. So that helps as well.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm really glad you got to watch this. Have you been a fan of Payne's other movies? Have you seen any of them, like Election? You mentioned about Schmidt, so it sounds like maybe you have seen that one.
That's the only one. I looked up a list of all the movies that he's directed, and About Schmidt, I think, is the only one that I've seen, and I really liked that. And I remember when it came out, it being one of those movies that either you loved it or you hated it, and I definitely was in the camp that loved it. So if all his movies are kind of like this and that, then I think I might seek out some more.
Yeah, and The Holdovers is getting all sorts of great press and ratings and things right now, and that's the newest one that's got Paul Giamatti, where he's a teacher at a school with kids that stay, or a kid that stays during like Christmas break. I'm really interested to see that one again, because Paul Giamatti, I'll watch him.
I love Paul Giamatti, so yeah. Exactly.
Excellent. Well, this has been awesome. So thank you so much for coming. It's been way too long since you've been on, but in that time, I think,
for sure.
I think last time you were on, you were just starting your podcast, I want to say, or it was like you hadn't. I don't know if you had started it yet or not. How long have you been doing that now, and what is the show? Remind people of that.
We are on episode 183 of my science podcast, All Around Science. My co-host is, her name is Maura, and she gets her science chops. Honestly, she's the director of a science center in Canada, and I don't get mine. Honestly, I just love science a lot. But we both love science quite a bit, and so we get on every week and we talk about what, a little bit of news of what's going on in science, and then just whatever we thought that week was really interesting. Maybe it's something in the news, maybe it's just something that we are really geeking out about and decided that how science geeks, they just have to tell you things that they've learned. So that's kind of what we do every week.
It's excellent. All
Yeah.
Around Science. It's a good show. I have
All
listened to
Around
it.
Science. Yeah, thank you.
And are you still doing the Diary of a Student Pilot, or did you end that?
No, I actually the episodes are still out there. You can find them.
Mhm.
But I stopped doing that. I was talking about flying while I was learning how to fly, and it just got hard to keep up with. So.
It's understandable. It's understandable.
Yeah.
But definitely check out All Around Science, and if you want to hear some diaries of learning how to fly, there's a few of those out there too. But Bobby, thank you so much for being here. It's not gonna be another 3 or 4 years before you're back. That's for sure. We're gonna get you back.
Yeah.
More often.
For sure.
And we're gonna get to hang out here in a couple of months. We'll be in Las Vegas.
I'm so
again.
looking forward to that.
I
Yeah,
am
I'm
too.
looking forward to that. I can't wait to see you again.
I can't wait to see you either. It's gonna be a blast. Now, if you like hanging out and watching this show live, you can do that on Sunday nights, 8:00 Eastern time at twitch.tv/tvstravis. Or if live isn't your thing, it's out as a podcast Wednesdays, anywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So you can check that out at just search for Wait You Haven't Seen. Look for @tvstravis on YouTube, or just go to tvstravis.com. You can find everything there, including the Patreon and links to merchandise and stuff like that. Patreon.com/WYHS. Next week, I've got Jay Funktastic coming back. We're going to go in a completely different direction from Sideways. Sideways was a wonderful character study, a very small film. It felt very relatable. Next week, we're talking about Roadhouse. So
That's
we're
gonna be great.
We're gonna go in the polar opposite direction, and I can't wait because Jay's never seen Roadhouse, which surprises me given what I know about him. But with the remake coming out soon with Jake Gyllenhaal, I can't wait. So that's gonna be next week, talking Roadhouse. I may have to play the Peter Griffin Roadhouse a few times. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But Bobby, thank you so much for being here. We'll do this
thank you
again
for having
sometime
me.
soon. And until next week, and until Roadhouse, just remember to enjoy your movies and be excellent to each other. This has been Wait You Haven't Seen.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any fucking Merlot!
Oh, I love that. It's so good.